Chaplain Gardner says, thank God and Mrs. Airy for the opportunity. So she wants us to begin with a session. We're going to have a discussion about if you've experienced death of a loved one or close friend within the last 12 months. Has anybody? 3 people? Several people have in the last 12 months experienced grieving.
Well, about maybe 13 or 14.
That's very recent. Very recent. I want to give you guys an opportunity to think about that for a minute. And even those of you who have suffered grief, although it may not have been as close as 12 months, but some of us are still grieving. And many of us want to move past the grief. Because, and we've all heard it said, but life goes on, right? But that doesn't make you feel good at the time that you're grieving. I mean, I have an outline, but I really can't do the outline. We're just going to do what we do, okay? That works better for me. And I'm going to share an experience that I had, and I'd like for you guys to do the same thing. And let's talk about it. How about that? I want to share with you in 1986, I was 23 years old, and I was engaged to a great man, I thought. And tragically, one Sunday morning, I got a phone call. Well, no. What happened that one Sunday morning, for some reason or another, I didn't go to church that Sunday. And I had a baby brother who just lived right around the corner, and we could go through the alley to each other's home, my mother's house and my house. And he ran over, he came and he talked to me, and then he ran back home. Well, about 10 minutes later, my mom called, and she said, Ari, what are you doing? Can you come over? And I said, oh no, I really don't feel like coming over. It's Sunday morning, working all week. On Sunday, I'm going to relax. And she said, can you please come over? I wasn't moved to go until she said, baby, can you please come here? I knew something was wrong, right? So I put on my clothes and I rushed out the back door and to the house. And when she opened the door, she said, come in. And I said, no. Because the look on her face told me that something horrible, really horrible had happened. And so I began to question her. I'm standing at the threshold of the door, and I began to question her, and I said, is it Rodney? That's my brother's name. She goes, no, but it's just as bad. And of course I knew. A lot of times, sometimes when people are really close to us, sometimes if it's going to impact us in a way so bad that God will show us things. So I'd seen it in a dream 2 months prior to that. And I didn't think I told anybody, but I do have a witness. Anyway, after she told me that, I did step into the kitchen and I went into the house. And then I was informed that Martin was in a drowning accident, that he and his brothers and his dad were out on the boat, and that he passed. And I was devastated. I'm 52 years old. I was 23 at the time, and that still hurts me. I still have sometimes cry about that. And I've been married for 16 years, and I love my husband. But does that have anything to do with it? Absolutely not. Well, my grieving process for years, I went on with life. Of course, I had to go on. But everybody, he was my measuring stick for everybody I encountered. If you didn't live up, if you didn't meet this standard, if you didn't meet this criteria, then you could not be with me. You know what I'm saying? Going through the process, and even today I still talk to his mom. She's 83. I love her to death. And I'm dealing with that even today. Somebody told me, they said, Ari, you know what? Somebody I went to high school, because I went to high school with him. And someone said, you know what, you should be over that by now. I said, you'll never get over it, but we learn to live with it. And that's where a lot of us are stuck, and that's where we want to move past. So we're going to talk it through together. Since we don't have the chaplain Ditra with us, we're going to talk it through together, and we're going to talk about how we can. Some of you have stories to tell. You can tell us, how did you move past it? I mean, I can share some of my things too, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk and to give me some information. We've got Christy with us, Queen Mother of the Red Hatter, Sassy Jewel chapter, who just lost her uncle, and she's just coming back from Nebraska. And I'm sure that even though Christy is with us today, Christy is grieving inside. And she's not the only one. You know, we're missing Annie, and then we have people who are out there who are watching, who we need to help as well. So, who wants to start? Don't be shy.
I just want to say that my husband died 3 days before Thanksgiving in 2002, and it was hard. Thanksgiving was not thankful at all at that time. But I had my son, I had my grandson, and friends, and they helped me through it. It was hard to do, but thank God for them.
I just want to ask you a question. How did you interact and deal with them as they tried to comfort you during that time? Because I know, I can imagine having the other part of yourself gone, especially during this festive time, and then you have your kids and your grandchildren trying to comfort you because you're hurting. How were you able to handle that without hurting them and then feeling guilty because you hurt them because you were hurting?
I don't know, really. I just know that that God was there to help me, and I just basically sort of did what they told me to do, you know, and you just go along. And that's about all I can say about it. I don't know, really. It's hard to...
It sounds like you just, as they helped you, you just followed through, went through the motions.
Yes.
I wasn't planning to share, but my husband died 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2002.
Oh,
And at the time, I was going through treatment for breast cancer. And so I was, at the time, I really didn't grieve. I was thankful that he was no longer in pain. I just went on with life. He had 8 children, and they were there to comfort me. My children helped, but they lived out of state. And I thought I was fine, but I really wasn't. Last Thanksgiving, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, had ALS, and he was at the very end of dying. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a text saying that they put him in hospice. They'd given him less than 72 hours to live. I booked an airplane flight for 10 days, planning to be there for her and to help, and I was returning on Thanksgiving Day. He held on and didn't pass away until Thanksgiving. And I really couldn't easily change my plane reservations. I came back, and when I landed, I got a text that he just died.
Wow.
So
wow.
Thanksgiving is, it's a time when we give thanks, but when we hold on as tight as we can to Jesus, because he's with us.
Amen. Amen. When you said that, it really touched my heart. 2 days before Thanksgiving, 2 days after Thanksgiving, same year, and how this festive time of family and Thanksgiving can be so devastating. So devastating. I'll show you in 1 second. I just wanted to say something about what you said. As most of you know, at the end of August and the beginning of September, I went home to Detroit to pick up my mother. And while I was there, I have a brother who passed away a few years ago, hit and run accident. His daughter, I went to see my niece and my sister-in-law. When I got in the car on my way home the next day, I found out that her son, who had just seen, 22 years old, was killed.
Oh my.
So as soon as I left, I couldn't go back. I just left, and I just drove from Detroit all the way back home. But he was 22 years old, and it was sad. When things like that happen, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, how do we handle this? How, especially, I mean, sometimes when people are sick, you know, we can say, oh, Lord, thank you. You know, I'm glad they're not, because people will say, I am so glad that, well, they're not suffering anymore. They're in a better place. We hear these things. I'm going to tell you, honestly, for me, that did not make me feel better. It didn't make me feel better. And I would always say to people, when I was younger, of course, I mean, much younger, before I was 23, I would always say to people, I know how you feel. And we don't just get real. I was 23 years old, and I lost a man I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And you tell me you know how I feel? No, you don't. You have no idea how I feel. I didn't realize until it happened to me. And some of us don't realize until it happens to us that we can't comfort other people with words of empathy, not those words of empathy, because we have to tell the truth. Let's put it like that. We have to tell the truth when we're dealing with people who are suffering from loss. Because if we don't tell the truth, it's not real. It's not real to them. It's not comforting to them. And what we're trying to do when we do this is comfort them. Is that right? We want to comfort our friends. We want to comfort our loved ones. We want to make them feel better. But if you don't feel better when somebody tells you they're gone to a better place, they don't feel better. You want to say something else? Can you stop?
I just wanted to say that when I got to the airport Thanksgiving morning before he died up in Akron, I started sobbing, and I couldn't understand why. And we had stopped at the hospice, you know, just to see him and I could say goodbye to him, even though he was in a coma. And I realized, in thinking about it, that I hadn't grieved. I was grieving for my husband. I was sobbing. I had not. It was 11 years, and I had not really grieved. I just thought I was fine.
Right.
And we need to grieve.
We need to grieve. She's absolutely correct. We need to grieve. And that made me think about something. How many of us actually do grieve and go through the grieving process? I mean, how many of us, you know, go through the process of grieving? Because some of us go through the motions, but we don't go through the process, the true process. I know I can speak for myself that after Martin died, I was very angry with God. And I had a close, intimate relationship with him prior to that. But I was angry. I was angry. And so, I mean, does that make sense? Has anybody?
Yes, definitely. My husband and I were married 54 years when he died. But 6 years before that, he had open heart surgery, did great, had cancer, was having chemo treatments, but he was progressing and doing well for 6 years. And we celebrated our 54th anniversary, and 2 weeks later, no, not quite, but anyway, a short time later, he had died. He was just like that, like,
Wow.
almost like he gave up. I don't know that, but I'm just saying that's how it felt. I didn't even realize that was happening until he was gone. And in shock. I was in shock. I know God was with me now, I know, but not right after, and I'm like you. And I yelled at him and I said, I don't believe in you, and I mean, I was a case. But slowly but surely, through my children, my grandchildren, and God working in me, that changed. And I came back to him and knew, yes, he was there all along. It wasn't his fault that my husband died, so.
Right, amen.
But I did get mad.
Yeah, we can take it back to Adam and Eve, right?
Yes.
I just want to say that I'm not glad that my husband died, but I do know that when he did die, he was in a better place. He had had 3 heart attacks. He had 3 strokes. He couldn't talk. He loved to sing, couldn't do that. And now I know he's doing all that. So I do feel much better about that.
The joys of life. When we no longer have the joys of life.
Well, I would like to say that, when you say that, a lot of times when that happens, you get angry with God. It is a heavy burden. Like I'm stillborn, baby, crib dad, and then my son passed the first day of 2/13. And that was very, all of that looked like coming back to me. So during that time, only thing I can say that, Lord Jesus, you know I love you. In whatever the condition and whatever, I know that he was there to help me to bear that burden. But yet and still, the grief was there. And he knows that it was love that made it happen to the grief. See, a lot of people always say that, why you do these, why you do this, it's because of love. If you didn't love a thing, just like when my baby passed away. This particular lady, she was telling me that, you know, why should you grieve? You have other children, and a lot of people, they love their babies, and I guess she was trying to get me to relieve that can be gone too. And then a lot of people are bored, the children. And I even think today, why she tell me that at a time that I know that I wanted that.
Right.
And so, only thing, and I tell people, it's God's. He give us all. He love us all.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. And I'm coming back here, and I can say amen to that today, but I must admit that, unlike you wonderful people, and maybe some people are here who are watching, I didn't have the, as close as I was to God, I didn't have the, I don't even know what word to say, God, I don't like you, and I'm very angry with you. I wanted to deny that, and I lived in denial of that for a long time, and it wasn't until I released that and said, I am so mad at you. How could you do this to me? How could you take, and I said, how could you take my whole life? My whole life, and we think it's our whole life. I really thought that was my whole life. It wasn't my whole life. It was not even a portion. Well, yeah, it was a very big portion of my life, but it taught me how to love. And I was more appreciative of the relationship, of the love. I was more appreciative of God taking me through that. But that didn't happen right away.
No.
That didn't happen, not even, I'll tell you, it was over a year or so later, excuse me.
I'm a pretty emotional person, as everybody that knows me knows. So you might see a couple of tears.
That's okay, baby.
Hold the microphone to your mouth.
In June, my sister called me and she said, Georgie, I need some help. Mama's got dementia and we need some help there. Need it bad. So I told everybody, friends here, I said, I'm leaving and I'll be gone for a little while. Trying to give some of my support. So I get there and I find out that dementia is, oh boy, it's nothing to play with, nothing to play with. I'm looking at TV on July 3rd, that night, and I'm in Chicago. And say 184 people have been shot.
Oh, my God.
184 people. It was like, oh my God, it's a lot of people dead. It's a lot of, this place is terrible. I'll be glad when I leave here. And the next day, I get a call. My firstborn grandson. I have 9 grandchildren. First one, and he's a twin, had been shot in the head. And he was in the hospital, and he was brain dead. He was one of the 15 that died out of the 184.
Oh, no.
Well, he was 25 years old. Just on the porch talking to a girl. I asked him, was he in a gang affiliation? What gang was he affiliated with? And he said, none. Working 2 jobs. Like to dress nice. Like to smell nice. He had a beautiful daughter. Took her for a manicure once a month. Manicure, pedicure. Only 6 years old. This is my first time really feeling my loss. This is it, because I just shut it all off. I just threw it away. I couldn't breathe. I tell people, and it was like just talking. But he's gone. When I saw him in the casket, I gave him a kiss and I said, I see you. You would have a bottle. That's it.
Thank you, George. It is a time to grieve, and it's never, ever too late to grieve. I don't care if it happened yesterday, if it happened last month, if it happened last year, if it happened 20 years ago. We can't move on unless we do that.
Well, let's see. A couple of people just reminded me of something, a feeling I had a couple of times, you know, by saying, you know, they had the people that they loved had suffered before they died. And so I think I want to talk about guilt. Because guilt sometimes can keep you from grieving properly because you see people that you love. I had 2. My father died of cancer and it was a bad death, you know, suffering. I had a brother who blew up in his home, but he didn't die immediately, and so he was burned most of the part of his body. It was a bad death. For a long time, it was very hard for me to say that in many places of my heart and my body, when I saw them suffering, I wanted them to stop suffering and leave and, you know, be in a better place. And because, you know, that's kind of funny because you're going, you know, you're feeling guilty that you feel that way. You know, because you know, it's when you're dealing with some, I mean, I guess to me, those are the painful kind of deaths. When you're dealing with that, taking care of them, watching them suffer, you start grieving way before they actually leave their bodies. And so you do have, to me, you have that wish, you know, and that prayer, please, God.
Yes.
You know. So that's all I want to say.
My mother passed about 6 years ago, and I taken care of her for 3 years. I didn't want nobody else to take care of her. I thought it wasn't good enough. It was, you know, I just wanted to be there. I wouldn't let nobody. They couldn't even give me time to go to the store or go out. I wanted to stay with mother. So I did. And, okay, I had one sister. It was just 2 of us. So she was in hospice. So they told us that night she would, you know, she would bring us back to the night. So we called all the brothers. We had 10 brothers, but they lived in different states. So we, me and my sister decided we would, can you, me and my sister decided we would stay with her. We didn't want nobody with that. So along about 12:30 at night, my sister said, I'm going to make some coffee. I said, okay, I'm going to the bathroom. So my sister would put the coffee on, and I went to the bathroom. Before I could get out of the bathroom, she was going just like that. She didn't want us to see her.
Absolutely.
So my sister went in and she looked at it. She said, Carrie said, come in. And I went, and she was gone. But you know, I grieved, I guess. But after, before, when the people began to come in, and I shut the door. And just me, and well, it was bad enough to pick her up. And I prayed for about 30 minutes. I thank the Lord for letting me have, my mother was 13 years old when I was born, so we were like, for having her all these years, all that she had done. And do you know, all of the grieving, everything just, I felt peaceful. And to this day, I feel peaceful. When I think about mother, I have a picture on the wall, I look at her, and she got a smile on her. And I think of some of the things we talked about, and it makes me happy, you know. And I haven't grieved, just ever like some people just heard, because my daughter's husband died, and that's been 10 years ago, and she's just like he died yesterday. And she can't get over it. But I told her, I don't know how, I guess, because I talked to the Lord, I talked to him. I just talked to him like I talked to you. And it seemed like I could hear him answering me through all the things. Okay, Carrie, it's going to be all right. You know, one of those 96 years old. And it was just time for her to go and get some rest. So I tell the people, okay, grieve. Everybody got their different way. But my way was, when I talked to her, we talked, she was laying there and she had passed on. And I told her all I had thanked for her for all she had did for me through the years and everything. And I've been at peace. I've been at peace. And I think about everything.
I know, right? Every day. You know, it's amazing when you think about and you hear the stories that we're sharing right now. We've talked about a little bit about grief, and guilt. You wanted to say something? I'm gonna let you say something, and I'll continue. Go ahead.
Okay, I've been through grief so many times with friends and family. And one thing you just got to remember is to keep them in your heart and keep remembering those times you had together. But the first time I had grief was when I was 5 years old. And it was my cousin, and he had SIDS. And my mother and dad took me to the funeral home to help me through the process, me and my sister. And it was hard. And you still remember those times, because I was with him every day. So just remember, if you've got kids that have loved ones that have passed, you have to have that responsibility to help them get through this grief.
Absolutely.
Got some hands up here.
I've talked for a long time. Speaking of children, when I was about 3, one of my very good friends' grandmother passed away, and she was a neighbor to us. And my parents wouldn't let me go to the funeral. And I thought, wonder why? I'd never been to one. I said, oh, babies are a gift from God and they're born naked, so I guess when you go back to God, you're naked too. So it's important to talk to children about this whole process. 2 of my classmates passed away when they were about 40, and one had been my first little boyfriend. One thing, we knew his death was expected. One thing we can do, and help me, was to write a letter to him about all of our childhood memories that I remembered, and I hoped it would cheer him up in his last few days. I did speak with his mother later, maybe a year later, because I don't get to Nebraska too often. And she said she read it to him in the hospital, and he really did appreciate it. So we don't know how people will react, but one thing to do if you expect a death is to write your memories. My dad passed away in 22 years ago, and longevity runs in my family, so it was not expected. He had a heart attack when he was 42 and had a quadruple bypass and angioplasty. He had taken care of himself, but it was time for another quadruple bypass, and I said, okay. I didn't go to Nebraska. I thought, he's a big, strong farmer. He'll do fine. Well, Mom called, and he didn't make it. He was in the surgery, in the OR, and then and did fine. He was in recovery, and things just went haywire, and they worked on him for 4 hours before he died, and he had all the best care, doctors, nurses, equipment. He wasn't out on the tractor by himself. You know, I tried to look for things I could be grateful for. Another thing I thought about is he could age and become like his father with dementia and sitting in a wheelchair just staring out the window. Grandpa was very peaceful in his old age. But my dad would not have liked to sit in a wheelchair. Before and after the funeral and lunch, lots of people were telling stories about my dad. Now, I knew my dad pretty well, but since I'd lived in Texas 20 years, I'd missed a whole lot of stories. They were fun and funny stories about my dad. And so it helped me so much to read the cards and listen to the stories and remember all those good things about my dad, not the 1 or 2 spankings I got. I really didn't care. But anyway, the good memories are what kept me through. And at that time too, Ari, somebody said, I know exactly how you feel. And boy, did I rise up inside. Of course, outside I kept my cool, but all that anger was pushed down. You do not know exactly how I feel. That's right. Do I need to stop? Okay.
Now, everybody, I want everybody to understand who Christy is. Christy is just returning from Nebraska because she just buried her uncle. So this is very, very fresh for her.
Oh, I just would like to say that I desire all of your prayers because during the holiday, when a lot of tragedy had happened, and now the doctor not saying too much about my husband, he's sick, and he was, you know, not talking well about it. And so now I'm grieving again inside, and I don't,
You don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to handle it.
don't know how to handle it. And I
You
don't
don't
know
can't
how to
prepare
deal
for it. And so prayer is necessary, and of course
That's
I'm
what
going to
I'm
say I'm
saying.
Christian, and I'm not ashamed of it. Prayer is necessary.
Right.
We have to comfort one another, because if we don't, who will? And we have to allow ourselves to be comforted. We don't have a lot of time left, and I am very aware of your time, and I'm respectful of your time, and we still have to do our door process. So, but I do want to say that I wanted to talk about a little bit about what Linda was talking about, guilt. Because a lot of people are unable to grieve because of guilt. Like she said, one of the big examples of is I want them to hurry up and die, but they don't really want them to hurry up and die. It's just that I don't want them to keep suffering. And it's taxing, and it's a lot of responsibility, and they're so sick, and you don't want to see them suffer any longer. But then when they do, now you feel bad because I wish I had never met that. I didn't mean it. Of course you didn't mean it. But we have to go on. Someone was saying that they had a relative that was still holding on. And I'm just going to share with you. We were at a convention last Friday, Susan? Last Friday. And after the convention and the Summit Women's Network was something that I had to introduce to some people. And after we did our presentation, a woman came up to me, a young man, a young man came up to me and he said, and he's probably watching, and his mom may be watching, and he said to me that my mother is still grieving. We weren't even talking about grief. That's just to say that the things that you do and the things that you say and this show how important this is, because some of the things that we say will open the door for a whole lot of other things. But anyway, back to what I was saying. He said that my mom is still grieving from the loss of her mother and her grandmother and her siblings. That's a lot of grief. That's a lot of grief. And that's a long time to hold on to stuff. And we can't live in grief. And that's what I want everybody to take away today. That regardless to what the circumstances and the situation, how bad you felt about what you said, and how you didn't spend a quality time. My mother had issue when my nephew passed about, I didn't spend enough time with him. Didn't spend enough time with him. I didn't spend enough time with him either. We didn't spend enough time. It doesn't, all of those things, all of the things, and there are things that we may not even want to talk about, but all of those things, we need to look at them. We need to just openly, honestly, because we can't tell the truth. You can lie to everybody else, but you cannot lie to yourself.
Right.
Not for real. You can fake it all day long, but the reality of it is, at the end of the day, you know you're lying.
Do you have time?
I have a little time left.
Okay, I won't keep it long.
I just wanted to share this. Excuse me, when my mother passed, and I'm very close to, I'm a Christian too, and I'm not ashamed of it, and I've been for some time, and I'm very close to the Lord. My mother began to, she never just went downhill. She had callers, she had 37 callers when she passed that she called morning and night to check on them. But the Lord told me to go and stay with her. And so when I got up there and I started staying with her at night, she said, honey, that's my nickname. She said, honey, you don't have to stay here with me. And I said, the Lord told me to stay here with you at night. And she said, well, if the Lord told you, you do whatever he said. So just a few more minutes. And while I was there from October to January, the Lord gave me everything that I was supposed to do for her. I had written her obituary. He gave me everything to put in it. He gave me everything, told me what to do, what to move, everything he told me. So when she passed that night, it was around 8 o'clock, and sometimes she wants a snack, and I asked her, I said, you want anything? She said, no, darling, I'm fine. I'm just gonna go to sleep early tonight. And about 15 minutes later, she was gone. And I didn't grieve until after the funeral, after everything was over. I just didn't have time. I didn't have time to grieve. And I just wanted to share that with you all, but I did grieve later. And I just thank God that he gave me the wisdom to do what he told me to do, follow his directions, and when time for the funeral and the picture and everything, I handed them everything that the Lord had given me, so all we had to do was just take it to the printer. I just wanted to share that with you all.
Yeah, that is a blessing. That is a blessing. I've got hands all over the place, and I don't want to look over you. Time is of the essence, and so, you know what? I just want to say this. I'm not ignoring anybody, but you know that time is far spent. I have to say that in spite of, no matter what we plan, it doesn't matter. And even for people who don't believe that there is a God, I have to say this, that in everything, he is going to have his way.
Oh, yes.
You know, he is going to have his way. And at the end of the day, it is going to be done.
Yeah.
I want to say to everybody that let's move on. Let's tell the truth. Let's tell the truth. let's list these things that we're feeling. If you're angry at God, you're angry at God. He knows it anyway. He knew I was mad. He knows it anyway. And he's big enough to take it. Thank you, Christy. Admit it. If you're mad at somebody else, admit it. You cannot forgive them until you acknowledge that you're mad at them. So that and all of these things that are holding us back, grief, to that young man's mother, to anybody here and anybody else that's holding on to someone who has gone on. If you have the faith, God gives everybody a measure of faith. If you have the faith to believe, just the faith to believe, then you understand that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Okay, I'm not here to preach because I know this is not what this is about, but I just want you to know that that you can still live after they're gone. Because we all have to do this. I've got to do it, you've got to do it. When it happens, we're devastated. But guess what? I'm going to just share this little secret, and we're going to leave, but we're going to still do door prizes. We're going to leave from the camera. But the secret is, we cry, but we're not crying for them. We're crying for ourselves. So all of us are a little bit selfish because they're all right. It's us we're crying for because we're the ones who are going to miss them. We're the ones who have these memories that we can't make more of because we can't live in the past anyway. We can't bring back anything that's happened. We can't go back. I do this and I'm guilty, and Lord help me. I am always thinking about my childhood and about when I was younger and how wonderful it was and how we had so much fun. It's over. New fun, new memories, new life. Which brings me to this point that where we are right here today. Although this is for women that are over 50, as everybody knows, I've had young women, I've had men, I have many people who have written me letters, who have sent me inboxes on Facebook, who have come up to me, and I just want you to know that this is for everybody. If you get something out of it, and I guarantee you that you will, because there is something for everybody. Because if you don't turn 50, you're going to die. It's one or the other. You can't get around it. You're either going to turn 50 or you're not going to be here. Right? So, and at 50, this is a new season, and I'm glad to be 50 plus. So we're going to leave. I hope all minds are clear. And I want you guys to remember when you walk out the door that there is life.
After 50.
Thank you.